All right, welcome back to yet another episode of A Fresh Juice, an indie game podcast. I am one of your hosts, Tommy Fresh, and joined as always is my cousin, my partner in crime, my friend,
lover in the nighttime.
You know, we bend all kinds of rules around here. It is
Matty Juice. What's going on, Tom? How are you, cuzzo? Hope you're doing well on this Thanksgiving week.
It is Thanksgiving. We have a food-themed game. Actually kind of works out, right? You know?
Yeah.
Is it good? We will see. We will talk about in the main squeeze, but I'm doing well. Just kind of running around. What did I do this weekend? My fiance's sister had a birthday, so we kind of hung out with her. We went to this museum, like this like house that this guy built, like in the early 1900s. And he just loved like textiles. No, not textiles. No, tiles, not textiles. Like ceramics and stuff like that. Yeah. And he had like all kinds of crazy stuff going on in this kind of mansion castle thing that he built just in like Doylestown, Pennsylvania, like the most random spot. Which, funny enough, I posted a picture of it on Instagram, and your wife had DM'd me and said, "Is that place cool? I've been looking at it." And I said, "Yeah, I think it's worth checking out." So that was fun. Oh, cool. Went to a rock show Saturday night as well at a local bar to see a band that I got to see at See Here Now in Asbury Park, a band called Yawn Mower, New Jersey band from the shore. And It was cool. It was an intimate, kind of setting. But I'll talk about that at the end at the rec room. I'm going to recommend them. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. It was a pretty low-key Sunday, too. Just kind of did some errands. I didn't even really – I watched a little bit of football, but that's it. Packers won, so we're going to win the Super Bowl. So there's that. What's going on with you, buddy?
Yeah, that was a nail-biter, that Packers game, too, while I was watching it. But, yeah, no, let's see, eventful weekend. Went golfing, which was fun. And then, on Sunday, just – watch some football. The Eagles play today, so yesterday I wasn't really caring too much about the games, but there were a lot of great games yesterday, so I was happy to watch them at least and hope and pray my fantasy team could do something, which it seems like they were just kind of mediocre yesterday. But yeah, no, other than that, it's been fun. I'm feeling a lot better now. I know the last episode I was a little under the weather, so I still have a occasional cough here and there, so hopefully it doesn't come up on the mic. But but feeling definitely much better and excited to get back into the fresh juice of things. You know what I mean? But yeah, no, doing pretty well. And Thanksgiving, it's coming up. I'm sure we'll talk about our plans and stuff like that later in the ep. But pretty excited for it. Got the week off of work too, so hard to complain this week.
Very nice, very nice. I did not take off the week, but it's a pretty like low-key week for me for work because I go in, I call on accounts like liquor stores and bars for my job, and they're all not the bars so much, but all the liquor stores are mobbed already. Even today, I went in and places were like packed. So, which is a good sign. That means that we're gonna have a nice big bounce back year because the liquor industry has been in a lull for about a year or so. Kind of as a response, like a snapback from COVID where people drank a lot. So I think we're kind of getting back to some kind of normalcy there, which is nice. So yeah, but Thanksgiving should be fun. I'm excited to eat some food and relax, maybe have a few drinks and watch some football.
Yeah.
Which I believe the Packers are playing the Lions Thanksgiving Day. So big game. So
yeah. There's also a Black Friday game, I think, this year, which is like a first, I believe. Yeah, so it's going to be a action-packed few days of football, which I'm pretty excited for.
Oh, yeah. Check out our football podcast, which is called Fresh Footballs Juice.
Fresh Balls.
Fresh Balls. But anyway, let's get to the task at hand. Indie games. We love them. Yeah. We love to play them. And before we get to our main squeeze, which is the review of the week, we always like to talk a little bit about some news. Now, I had a busy day at work today, so you looked up some stuff for the news. So can you take us through what you found? What's going on in the world of indie games right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I threw in two articles here. Well, one is a video actually that was sent to me by my buddy Kyle. Shout out to you, Kyle. Thanks for sending this over.
Shout out Kyle.
And this is an hour-long video, so I actually haven't watched all of it yet. I'm maybe about halfway through, but it's actually from an indie developer named, I'm gonna say Jonas Tyroller, but it's probably pronounced completely different from that. Who has made a few successful indie games, and the video is titled "How AI Will Make Full-On Video Games." So it's a very interesting perspective from a developer that has had successful games on how, kind of the current state of AI in gaming and where he sees it going. And he's actually quite an optimist about it, from the parts that I've seen so far. It basically provides like a really in-depth like analysis of just like how AI has been evolving, how developers can anticipate to use AI in video games. When they're talking about AI, and I know that's kind of the hot topic right now. A lot of it is kind of like, it's text to text or text to image or whatever it is. So a large kind of question mark is will there ever be kind of text to game, right, where you can just put a prompt in and it builds an entire video game. And he kind of argues that that will be part of it, but since games involve so many different things, music and 3D models and story and all these different elements, where AI is usually good at kind of building one of those elements, but not necessarily all of them kind of in sync together. He talks about how developers could use it kind of in pieces where, if you have, maybe you're struggling with music for your game, or you're not good at that aspect, that's where kind of AI might be able to fill in for you. So it's not necessarily, being the entire game generated through AI, but certain parts of the game could be generated through AI. I actually just saw a recent, there's even mods now, not to get too off track of this, but there are mods now for games. I think one of them was for World of Warcraft, where I guess normally there isn't vocal dialogue that happens when you actually read text in the game when you go up to like certain characters. So AI is now filling in for that. And it sounds very realistic. Like this guy walked up to like this dwarf and it was, he was like, "Oh, hi, how are you?" Like it's unbelievable that that was AI. So I think it's these like little things here and there that this guy is predicting, will, that's how AI will kind of get involved with gaming. And specifically, indie gaming is an interesting topic here because we know indie games don't have as many resources as other studios, so perhaps they will lean on it more than AAA studios. I'm not too sure, but it was just a really interesting video. I definitely recommend looking it up on YouTube. It's called "How AI Will Make Full-On Video Games." Like I said, it's about an hour long. It was posted like less than a week ago, and it's just a really great video, from a developer perspective, because we hear so many things, so many arguments, right, about AI, and I there's kind of a double-edged sword with a lot of it. So it was just interesting to kind of get his perspective on it. But I know AI is kind of also the enemy of originality in a lot of places. So it was very interesting to see his take on that as well. And I definitely recommend it. And even for you, Tommy, to check out the video at some point, because it's just, I'm sure it'll be a hot topic when it comes to PAX East. I'm sure there'll be some developers that mention AI that we talk to. So yeah, but it just killer video so far.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested to watch it because I I have a lot of complicated feelings about AI, right? Because I definitely come from a more artistic side of just life, right? Like I play music and I love creating things and stuff like that. So I understand that progress is good in technology, and AI is certainly a technology that we will definitely lend itself to a lot of progress in the world. I always get a little bit hung up when it comes to the artistic side of things, right? Because like you mentioned, like, oh, maybe you're not good at music, you can have AI do it. That's tough, right? I think you can do that, right? Obviously, nobody's stopping you, right? But on the flip side of that, that would be really neat if you found somebody who could do the music. That, like, the idea of a struggling artist is a real thing. It does that kind of idea doesn't come from nothing. So there are people out there that can make the music and maybe meet the price point that you're looking for. Now, obviously, if you're working with limited resources like indie developers are, that can be tough, right? Because, you know, you can't afford to pay people. So, you know, I'm interested to watch this video. I love a good video essay, and just kind of get the, you know, at least open my kind of perspective on where a developer might see it help. I could definitely see where it can, certainly with, you know, even just like in I guess what would you call it? Like lifestyle like enhancers, like just making things easier so that you can get to the harder stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
personal assistant kind of
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, hey, listen, I mean, can you, like, this AI, can you just schedule, like, I got to do these different things, can you schedule that for me? And certainly it would be able to, at least you'd hope anyway. And until you're like, AI, I'm dentist and, you know, picking up my kids at the same time. But, you know, it's interesting thing, especially with games. And I'm sure as we continue this podcast, this would not be the first time we talk about it, right? There's a lot of great things that AI can do. I mean, there is the possibility of medical advances that we could never even fathom with AI, right? And, you know, I'm always just a little cautious when it comes to the art side, because the art side is something that has always been about expression. It's hard for a fake thing to express, right? It can do, but it's hard for it to express. Maybe we get to a point where it can express, and then maybe we have bigger issues. Because,
I think we do. Yeah,
because I've seen iRobot, and a million other sci-fi movies. But no, certainly interesting. I'm excited to take a look at that. Now, what is this next thing about Xbox?
Yeah, so this next thing here is an article just from the program director at Xbox. And essentially, Xbox is just saying that they are investing more than ever into indie games. I think there's been a lot of talk, especially around the Activision Blizzard acquisition that they've had, where okay, this now means that they're not going to be focusing as much on indie games because now they have all these other established IPs under the Microsoft umbrella. You know, will indie games kind of fall off and it won't be a focus anymore? But Xbox has come out, which they didn't have to do. Like they could have easily just waited until E3 or whatever, any sort of conference and just proven that they're still putting out indie games. But I like that they came out and they said, we're still going to be focusing on indie games and working with indie creators. And they actually, in terms of like Xbox Game Pass, they mentioned that Microsoft has paid over $4 billion in royalties to developers so far. Now, obviously, that's not only indie developers, but you can imagine how much of a difference that has made to a lot of indie devs' lives. So it's just really good, just really kind of a feel-good news story that, Microsoft is not abandoning indie games in any way or any of the focus on indie games. Especially with like one of their, obviously most popular services, Game Pass, being a big kind of proponent of people trying out new indie games. So, it's just kind of a feel good story here from Microsoft. But what are you thinking about this, Tommy?
Yeah, I kind of like this, right? Because there's this thing about indie games, right? They're so great. We obviously really love them. Sometimes they are tied, at the wrist based on the limitations to oftentimes just being on Steam, right? And I think Steam is a wonderful platform for people to use, to like be able to play games and have this kind of connectivity with people over the internet. But sometimes you just want something like a little bit more portable, and sometimes people already have an Xbox or a Switch or whatever, and they don't want to have to buy like a Steam Deck or something like that. Just to be able to play their games like in a more comfortable setting, right? We have nice office chairs, but nothing beats a couch, right? I would agree. So like to see Xbox at least verbally say, hey, we're a little bit getting more behind it is nice to hear, and hopefully kind of leads us down a path where indie games just reach like maximum accessibility for people. So yeah, no, pretty exciting. And obviously the Switch, which we obviously covered last week, that they always do that indie spotlight. Is that what they call it?
Oh, the showcase.
Showcase, yes.
Yep.
And obviously Nintendo's like, hey, we'll showcase these games, and so it'd be nice if everybody was kind of getting to that point of accessibility for these indies. So
yeah, absolutely. And I would love to see Sony come out and say something like this, because we kind of already know Nintendo is super involved with indies. Microsoft has been. I know Sony does, kind of give a platform for certain indie games, but it would be nice if they kind of leaned into it a bit more, just to kind of have the big three, going at kind of full steam with the indie games. But yeah, great to see from the Microsoft crew. But I think it's time. Is it time for the main squeeze, Tommy?
Should we
start squeezing?
We're gonna start squeezing, yo. We're gonna start squeezing, and the game we have this week, Thanksgiving week, a food themed game, is Cuisineer or Cuisineer. Like I want to say, I don't know. It's because Cuisineer.
Or is it Cuisineer?
Cuisineer. Anyway, so this is a food-focused rogue-like action game that kind of challenges you to like go out, collect ingredients for this restaurant that you're trying to get up and running and stuff like that. So basically, you're by day you're running this restaurant, and then you go out into the world, different levels and stuff like that, and just kind of like farm different kinds of ingredients based on the enemies that you're killing, yada yada yada. This is a game that is on just Steam, if I'm not.
Yeah, just PC for right now.
Just PC, and it is $25, which is a little bit in the higher range for some of the games that we've reviewed. And
we did get keys from the developers for this. So just prefacing that, we still do unbiased reviews, but just to be transparent about that.
Absolutely. And it was released the 9th of November. So it's been about 2 weeks since it's been out. And we got some time with it this week. And, it's going to be interesting to talk about, because while this game is not that different from some of the games we have reviewed, this is also stylistically a little bit of a departure from the things that we've talked about. So do you have anything to add about like kind of the overview of the game before we get into our actual review?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would have to add is that it is procedural. So, it's trying to kind of have that replayability. So just if you're into kind of procedural games, I would definitely obviously keep listening. Even if you're not into procedural games, I guess keep listening to our review. But I just want to point that out, because I know a lot of people do tend to care about that sort of stuff, especially when it comes to games like this. But yeah, let's get into it. Start squeezing that gameplay.
Let's squeeze it. So I'll start about gameplay. Yeah. So this gameplay is pretty interesting. So you start off and you get this really, really basic, simple kind of tutorial. You just run around and it gives you the buttons to use, and you use them and you beat some chickens, and then you go into the world, right? And you kind of get a feel for the entire gameplay within the first like 10 minutes, I think. And you do that little tutorial, you figure out how combat works, right? You just run around, you can dash, you can just hit with your spatula, and then you have a left trigger and a right trigger. I use a controller to use specials, right? And they have a charge time or like a cooldown time when you use them. So once you finish that tutorial, you go to the town, and then you kind of get thrown into the story, which we'll talk about. But part of the story is that you have this restaurant that your parents used to own, and now you own it, and you have to run it if you want. And obviously you want to. The story's not going to let you not want to. So part of this is, part of like running this restaurant is, well, you have to make it nicer, right? So you have this kind of customability kind of thing going on. Almost, I mean, reminiscent of like Animal Crossing, I guess, in a way.
Yep.
So like you change the wallpaper, the flooring, you go buy furniture, yada yada yada, and then when you open the restaurant, people come in and they're asking for food, right? And you have to have the ingredients to make what they want, right? And you kind of collect recipes and different ingredients throughout the game, and you increase your inventory slots and stuff like that. So it's pretty much the gameplay in a nutshell, right? Like once you're done serving your patrons for a day, you got to go back out into the world, get more inventory and stuff like that. And then there's a town that you live in as well that you can talk to different people that also have different kinds of businesses that you can buy stuff from. And sometimes they'll give you like side quests, right? So that's it. And I will say as a roguelite fan, and also a fan of like Animal Crossing, and a fan of another game that this game reminds me terribly of, is Moonlighter, which is the same premise. The exact same premise it was a little bit more original then, right? And I think the execution was a lot better because there was a certain degree of difficulty in Moonlighter, and it was also very streamlined and was not pulling you in a lot of different places. Like, no, like this is what you're doing. You go to dungeons, you do it, you come back, and you try to build this like shop or whatever. So, all that being said, I found this game to be like on the gameplay side. Sure, the combat was fine, but it wasn't anything that I was blown away by. Right? It was a game where you can do pretty much anything else that you can do in like any other kind of like little hack and slash, but it didn't feel like it was doing anything different. And I found myself kind of being uninterested, right? And we'll get to the story. That might be a part of it, but also it just it felt so half-baked and like almost like soulless in a way where like I do not care about this restaurant. I don't care about going out into these worlds and collecting ingredients. And, there is a certain cool thing about collecting the recipes I actually liked, right? Like, let's see what kind of recipes I can keep getting and whatever. And like the different kind of ingredients I have to look for. But it also felt like, because it's procedural, it didn't feel like you ever had like some sort of direction in terms of collecting the ingredients. You kind of felt like I'm just going out and trying to get ingredients and hopefully I get the right ones. That's how I felt. And I think sometimes they'll feed you like the correct enemies for what you need for like main quest stuff. But like in terms of like building out your recipe in your restaurant, it felt like you just kind of like going through the motions to even try to get to that point. And that's just where I kind of really just felt it, like even though there's a lot going on, it felt very repetitive and not necessarily challenging in any kind of way. Like in terms of the gameplay, it was more challenging as like this is hard to actually get these things that you need, but you don't really have the resources to actually go and try to find the things that you need. Is how I felt playing the game. I mean, initially it felt like pretty streamlined, and then it kind of started to get to this point where it's like, no, you just gotta grind, which I don't think is a good way to have a roguelite. I think you need to feel like there's some kind of progression, and there's probably a little bit here, but it never felt like you were actually progressing. So that's where I'm at with the gameplay. What about you, Matty?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with a lot of your points. I actually have written down here like Animal Crossing meets like Moonlighter. But I think this game, like talking about like the gameplay loop, like go into like these levels to get like your crafting and your cooking materials. You go back to the town to open your restaurant to serve your customers, and then they pay you, and then you can use that money to upgrade your restaurant, and then it's kind of just that loop over and over again. I think this game almost to me sort of felt like, how like an Animal Crossing, like you're really the whole purpose is to make something that looks really cool, like your house or whatever it is. Like you want to make it yours. And it kind of felt like this game should almost like they were banking on that aspect being the aspect that carried you through the game of like, oh, I really want to get my restaurant to like look amazing, when I think it should have been kind of focused on the other side of it, where the restaurant's fine and all that, but I think the gameplay of trying to get all the recipes and like going through the levels and all that should have been where most of the focus is. And it just felt like that gameplay was kind of shallow. Like you mentioned, there's only like, there's a few buttons for you to hit, and like you can get upgrades and different bags and things like that to increase your inventory size and like the amount of items in your hotbar and all that, which is fine. But it just never felt like the gameplay was like super engaging when you were trying to farm for things. I just kind of felt like I was over there like, okay, I got enough like chicken meat. I'll head back now. And then also every time you head back, at least every single time I went back to the town, it's nighttime. So then that means you have to go, everything is pretty much closed in the town. You have to go to sleep. And then the next day you have to worry about like, do I open the restaurant? Do I go farm for more like materials? I'm not really sure. I had like when I opened the restaurant as well, like I was unaware of kind of how it was going to work. So I think that's maybe like a kind of an onboarding thing. Like I wasn't aware that if I put all these chairs and tables down, like people only sat at like two of the chairs. So it's just like, well, I just wasted my time kind of buying those chairs and putting them down until I get kind of more tables, I guess. So I had people coming in, they were looking for recipes and dishes I didn't even have. I had one customer like steal my food, or like he just ate and ran away. So like that sort of stuff is fine. It just like, none of it was like really explained to me, and I feel like it would have kind of helped if they it just kind of felt like they weren't leaning in a particular direction. Like it's just like, should I be going and farming a bunch of stuff? Should I be building up the restaurant and worrying about the restaurant stuff in the town? It just kind of felt like I was divided on like what I should be doing. Um, and obviously you do get quests and things like that, but it was never anything that like I felt like I needed to go on a journey for. Like when I played Moonlighter, I felt like, okay, like I'm about to go on a journey to try to get as much like stuff as I can to bring back to my shop. And I just, it had that degree of difficulty as well. So maybe that's it. Maybe even increasing the difficulty you know, could maybe make it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, I just felt like it was a weird mix of like Animal Crossing and Moonlighter, and it never really leaned in either direction as much as it probably should have. I think it would have been interesting from the gameplay side because I like the concept of like, okay, you have a restaurant, you have to go get materials, get your cooking resources and all that. And then I thought it would have been interesting if like it was maybe more like overcooked style where like you bring things back and then you have to try to like build these recipes. Like you don't just like unlock recipes, but you're mixing and matching things to see like if it works. Maybe even like kind of like Minecraft-esque where like I'm just putting things together and like let's see what happens. Or even like Zelda, where you just like you don't know what you're cooking. I think that could have been interesting because then you kind of have this organic like discovery phase of like, oh, like if I put two eggs in here and like a piece of chicken meat, it turns into this. But if I have, an egg and a pepper, it turns into this. And you start unlocking recipes that way. It just kind of seemed like the restaurant, all I was doing was like standing there. People came in, the little thought bubble pops up of what they want. I like go hit the cauldron that's making the food, and it's ready in like 5 seconds. And then I don't even deliver it to the people. They just go pick it up and they just go back to their seat and eat it. So I just kind of felt like I was just like standing by the stove, just waiting for people's orders to come in. And maybe that evolves, as you play through the game, but even from gameplay I looked at, later in the game, it didn't seem like that kind of loop changed ever. So yeah, the gameplay, I will admit, like it was promising at first, but then it just kind of fell a little shallow from what I really wanted for the gameplay. So yeah, it just, kind of a bummer. And maybe these are things they can fix with updates, but it just it didn't really hook me. I was just kind of like, I don't know. There wasn't a lore with any part of the game for me. in terms of the gameplay. So I do think the controls were easy, though.
Yeah,
obviously.
they
So
certainly were.
like, maybe, and this is another thing too. Like I feel like this game would be perfect for the Switch because I feel like there could be kids out there that really like this game, and just kind of like that killing time with it. But I just feel like with it being on PC, there's a certain audience that you're kind of expected to have when you're on PC, and like I just don't anticipate there's going to be like a lot of people kind of digging this game. So I don't know. I don't want to be too harsh, but like it's just like you said, it's kind of something we've seen before, and we've seen it a lot better than this, like with that gameplay loop. I do really like, and I know I'm kind of going off the gameplay, but I really do like this sort of style game though with that gameplay loop. I wish other games would kind of do it, and I think it would be even really interesting if Animal Crossing actually had like a restaurant expansion where like because you have all those dishes in New Horizons that you can make. It'd be really kind of cool to like run a restaurant with like dishes you discover and all that sort of stuff. And make money and make bells from that. That could be kind of cool, but that's a whole different conversation outside of this game.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, it's like half baked is the word I have in my notes.
Yeah.
Right. It's like a lot of half baked concepts built together, and never really achieves the full kind of enjoyable experience that it definitely had the potential to be. And it's not all bad, right? There's like you said, like controls are easy. I think the idea is a good idea, and that it can be just executed a little bit better. But now, what about the story? What were your thoughts on the story?
Yeah, so this game definitely has like a comic relief sort of side of things. I felt like when you first get to the restaurant, your character's name is Palm, I think, and you find out your mom and dad sold everything in the restaurant to fund their trip around the world, which I just thought was hilarious. And I just that's such a ridiculous premise. And the name of the restaurant is Potato Palace, which I don't even think I have any dishes that have potato in them. So it's like kind of interesting that it's called Potato Palace. And then you kind of have this very Animal Crossing-esque, like tax collector guy comes and he's like, hey, you're in debt. Like you need to pay off like this massive debt. It's like Tom Nook coming to your house, telling you need to, pay in bells or whatever. But I think like the story, there are some interesting characters that you can come across, and like that's kind of cool that you can kind of walk around and even if someone doesn't have a quest for you, like they still kind of have something to say. So I kind of thought that was interesting. It gave me a little bit of like Pokemon vibes in a way, but I never really found myself like getting too invested in the story. Like for games like this, I just want to kind of go out and defeat things and then come back and like reap my rewards, so I do appreciate sort of the comedy side of the story. It is very kind of light-hearted and nothing kind of too crazy sort of going on that I experienced, but I also just don't know how much I even care that there is a story, and it's also it's all text, right? So you're reading the entire story that's happening. So I have the tendency to just kind of fly through that. I think I mentioned on the podcast before, I don't really like games with a lot of dialogue, like games like Skyrim or Fallout, things like that. I just tend to just skip through all the text, and just kind of get the highlights. So I was kind of doing that with this game as well. Not that there was too much text, it's just that's how they're portraying the story, and that's if you want to follow the story, you just have to read everything. But yeah, that's kind of my take on the story. Similar to the gameplay, it's kind of like it didn't really grab me or anything like that. But I will admit I did find a few things funny. But curious to know kind of what you think, Tom.
Yeah, it definitely has a lighthearted vibe. That's for sure. Very. Now, this is so something you mentioned in the gameplay, which is going to be interesting. It's going to tie into my thoughts on visuals as well. So I'm gonna talk about story, and I'm gonna go right into visuals. Right, very lighthearted, very simple, basic story. Right, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think you can just use there's tropes in video games, and it's totally fine to use them. Right, and But that being said, it's like a lot of what we've seen, right? You know, like you said, the tax collector, you know, and just like, oh, you know, conveniently, you know, your parents want to travel the world, and now you're stuck with this. Now you got to do all of that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and at least they gave us a reason as to why everything's happening. But yeah. It's just not engaging. I don't think it's not anything that I found very interesting. The characters, the only differentiating thing, like, I felt like with the characters is how they looked, to be honest. And we'll talk about that as well. I just felt like it was just whatever. Like, I think if the story kind of like had a little bit more weight to it, not saying like someone should die or whatever, you know, like, oh, it's like if you don't go feed these people in your restaurant, people will die. No, that's not what I'm saying. I just like, it just didn't feel it. It felt a lot like the gameplay, a little bit soulless and just like kind of relying on this anime aesthetic that, you know, maybe is what they were like trying to bring people in, especially the PC crowd, right? Maybe that's, I felt like that was what was going on. Now let's talk about the visuals. The story was whatever, right? It's a roguelite procedural game. The story doesn't have to be much, right? But
now I do think real quick, like in terms of like kind of raising the stakes a little bit, it could be interesting because, you know, we'll get into the art, but like there is that, you know, anime kind of influence on it. Like if there was a rival restaurant or something in the town, right? Like kind of like, you know, like an anime battle, but it's between restaurants, like something like that really motivates you to like keep like pleasing your customers. Like I just felt like I didn't even care when a customer didn't have a good time at my restaurant. I was like, oh, well, there's nothing I could do. Like, I don't have that recipe, I guess.
Yeah, we're the only game in town. What are you going to do? Come on back if you want some food. I don't know.
Yeah, like it could have been like, you know, if there was another restaurant, maybe like those customers that, you know, you don't have a recipe for, you can see how much money they were going to spend at your restaurant. And then they leave. And you're like, oh my God, I just lost out on like $100 like dollars or whatever it is. So like, I think that's a great point, like kind of being able to raise the stakes. And obviously no one needs to die, but maybe there was like a rival restaurant or like something, you know, something to just motivate you. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents on the story there. I know you want to dive into the art. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're totally right. And now I do. So you mentioned in your gameplay, you said, oh, I think like a lot of kids would really like this. Now, this is going to be my rant that maybe just like, you know, people are like, all right, Tommy just doesn't get it, right? Whatever. I know that we are in the age in which anime is the most popular it's ever been, at least in American culture, right? And, you know, people all over the place, like people like you wouldn't even think or watch anime, right? Like when we were in high school, there was just like an anime club and those people watched anime and like maybe some other people. Now, nothing wrong with anime. I enjoyed quite a few of them. But you mentioned that this game could be a home run with like a lot of kids, like on the Switch or whatever. I have a problem with this kind of waifu art, right? Like these really like, you know, okay, the character designs, it looks good. So whoever drew it it did a great job. But like, it's like a cute little animal kind of humanoid thing. And then it's just like overly sexualized, which is, I guess, fine.
The kids love it, Tom. They love it.
Which I think is like, it's like, okay. But like, this is not a game that needed it. I don't think. Like, obviously, you know, a lot. And I see like the TikTok ads for like mobile apps and stuff like that. It's just like a hot anime girl who's like shooting guns and her ass is jiggling or something like that, and you're just like, well, who is this for? Maybe it is for the kids. I don't know.
I mean, it's being shown to you.
It's being shown to me. Hey, listen, my algorithm's all over the place, but I just like when I see like this overly sexualized cutesy animal stuff, and then like these big buff like wolves that like they're definitely insinuating they just like want you to ship the couple and like make weird art of it. Maybe, I don't know. That's just where I've seen it done, so I just know these things happen, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
So
get
like,
you.
I'm just trying to be realistic. So like, you made a great point. Like, I think kids could enjoy this. The premise is very kid friendly. The the overall vibe is very kid friendly, and then you just like, I don't know, you just got like fucking, I don't know, like these cats and dogs
Anime
with like
knockers.
big old knockers. Like, kind of like, it's just weird, man. Like, can't we
Yeah.
just, like, Animal Crossing doesn't need to do that. And like,
Right.
obviously it's not an indie game, but like, it's such a good benchmark for having a cutesy game that a lot of people enjoy, of all different, races, creeds, ages, whatever.
Mm.
And I just, when I see this stuff, I just felt like they're trying to pander to a certain kind of audience, and I don't think it's I don't think it's wrong to enjoy that stuff at all, right? But I think when I see this, I'm like, they had this idea that, oh, I had this really cute game, right? It's like a roguelite. It's like a nice introductory roguelite. Like, I think it
Yeah.
could be. It has the potential to be like, for like a younger audience, like perfect. Like, if you
Yeah.
want to end up playing like Hades or like whatever, or like Wizard with a Gun or something like that, you can play this super easy and like have this like kind of fun little vibe. You're just like doing a restaurant. And then they're like, it felt like they worried that maybe not enough of the roguelite crowd or whatever would want to play, and it wouldn't get the press or whatever. And they're like, well, let's just make it overly sexualized. I felt it was anyway. Maybe I'm just a little bit prude or something like that. But like, it just felt like such a clash, because I'm like,
Yep.
oh, this is like the little enemies are like really cute little chickens and like turnips and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, that's really cute and whatever. That makes sense for like a game for younger people. But then, and then I don't know. It just maybe I'm just maybe I'm just too old. I can't, I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't get what the kids like. But
Yeah.
it was interesting. But all the anime kind of weeb stuff removed, the graphics were okay, right? I don't really like, because so what the graphics reminded me of was when Pokemon started getting into the 3D realm, right?
Mm.
Where they would have this kind of 3D character running through this kind of still not super 3D world or whatever. It's still, it had this like juxtaposition that didn't really vibe with me. Now, we've talked about like even that one game we talked about a couple weeks back, where it's definitely something that you can work with, where the character design might be more spritey and then the
Yeah.
world is 3D, or vice versa. I think it's a thing that you can do, but like I felt like it was not really doing it for me. And another issue I had was when you go out into the world, it was sometimes tough to figure out what you can interact with and what you can like destroy for resources, right? Like, I felt like sometimes like, oh wow, I could destroy that and get resources. I had no idea. I passed like 30 of those in this level, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, maybe I'll try something else, and I'll be hitting something else for a while, and it'll never break. And I'm like, okay, so like everything just looks the same. You have to kind of figure it out, which I'm not a huge fan of. I would like a little bit of guidance. I don't need my handheld or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I just would like a little bit of guidance when it comes to that. So that was where I kind of fell on it. I might be coming down on it a little hard, but that being said, like, whoever drew the animals or whatever they are did a great job. Like, it's certainly great character design and whatever, but it's certainly for a audience that did not match the vibe, in my opinion, as a fair weather game player. I'm not all on the anime side, and I like anime, but like I'm not in it like that, and certainly not a furry.
Yeah.
I swear. So
Yeah. Sure.
but what are your thoughts on the visuals?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think there was a disconnect between like the actual gameplay and then like the characters and like the kind of little cutscenes you get put into when like people are talking, where that's like very on the anime side, and then like the gameplay itself reminded me of like Overcooked, like sort of like art style in a way, But definitely I was getting like kind of those like Pokemon XY sort of vibes a bit as well. Um, and I just feel like it wasn't necessary to kind of have like the anime stuff. Like I would have preferred that this game kind of lean into its own art style and like it has such a great name too. I feel like where like I was anticipating it kind of being, like the way like Overcooked, right? Like I know I mentioned it before, but like you hear that name and you're immediately kind of thinking it's something like kitchen related, or like cooking related. And then when you look at the game, you're like, oh, okay, like I understand. Like this is, this all kind of ties in. And then like we're like Cuisineer, which that's just how I'll say it, I guess. And you hear the name Cuisineer, and then like you see some of the gameplay, and you're like, okay, I get that. And then like you look up a trailer or whatever, and it's like it's got like anime stuff in it, and I'm just like, why? Like they're not even dressed like chefs. Like like to me at least, I didn't know. Like I just kind of felt like there was a disconnect there, and it almost seemed like maybe the devs or whoever is just such a big fan of anime, they just wanted to incorporate it into their project, which like you said, it's fine to do that. I just, as someone who is, I don't personally watch like a lot of anime. I don't have a problem with anime or anything like that. Like there are animes that I think look really cool, and there's games, like I know we talked about like Leica Age Through Blood. It kind of almost had like little anime vibes, and it even had like all the characters were animals as well, and that didn't bother me at all
Mm-hmm.
because it fit with the world, it fit with the vibe. This game, it just, yeah, there's like a disconnect between there. Like I feel like if Animal Crossing had something like this, I wouldn't play Animal Crossing as much, and it's just because of the art there. So I do think it is a bit odd. As far like aside from all the anime stuff, um, I think that the gameplay and everything looks like very simple and kind of whimsical. And when I was in the world, though, I did notice like there are items that like kind of have this little shine on them or little like glisten, and like that is an indication that you can break them. But I didn't know that until maybe after like my second run that
Mm-hmm.
that was like a thing, because I was also going around kind of hitting everything, trying to see what was, what could break. So I think the town looks fine, like everything, even like the UI, like your backpack and all that sort of stuff looks all right. I will say though that like a game like Moonlighter, I really enjoyed like the way that art was in terms of like your bag and inventory and all that sort of stuff. I thought that like fit very well. There maybe is a little disconnect with the way the UI looks and the gameplay. Again, it's almost like another layer of just like almost three different art styles that I don't know why they were like they were trying to be blended together. So I don't know, but yeah, I do agree with like the anime stuff. I thought the art was fine, and I actually think like you bring up a great point about like this could have been, and it could still be like an introductory game to like roguelites, right? Like for like kids or whatever it is. And I think that's why it's important that this game releases on Switch at some point. But and I think the art style helps with that a lot, except for the anime sort of stuff. It can like something like that could change the rating for your game like
Mm-hmm.
easily. So like that's something they would have to consider. I'm not sure what this game is rated, because I think Steam has different ratings than like if you were gonna have like a published like disc game that was gonna go out to like consoles. But um, yeah, I do think again, like it's almost like a similar thing. It almost feels like the art was almost a little half baked because it wasn't thought through about how everything kind of connects. It just seems disconnected in so many places, and even like the cooking aspect of it. Like I would have liked maybe because the game is so focused on food, all you get when you cook is a little like time, like a 6 second timer. I'm sure it changes based on what you're cooking, and then all of a sudden the dish is done. It would have been cool if there was kind of like something that pops up like a cauldron, and like, you're just dragging and throwing things in there, and you're making stuff. Like just a little bit more art on the cooking side of things, because I feel like the game should be, it's supposed to be so focused on that. Probably would have helped it as well, but yeah, so it sounds like we're on a similar page with the art as well. But It's interesting. It is interesting overall. I think the decisions they made for this game with the art.
Yeah, and I think the people that will enjoy this will be the players that want to spend time with these characters, right? Because that seems to be where a lot of the focus went, right? The characters and like giving them some kind of personality or whatever, whatever that may be, and for whatever reason you want to hang out with these characters. But I just, for me, it wasn't doing it, and I just, and you're right, like there's so much that could have been a little bit better, and like you look at the UI and stuff like that, and you kind of like, I like that you have like your health bar is on like a spoon or whatever. That's kind of neat. And then like your like inventory slash like special weapons or whatever, your hotkeys or whatever, is like your belt or whatever, which like makes sense. You're going out into the world, but I don't know. I think there's like, oh, what do we like? Even the spoon I'm looking at, I like that they did that, but it also feels like, oh, we got to have a health bar. What should we put it on? Just put it on a spoon or something like that. Like, it doesn't feel like the actual gameplay is what mattered to the developers. And like, maybe I'm wrong. Certainly could be wrong. And also, I didn't really love the time mechanic and like how it looked up in the right corner. Cause like, I understand, like, I was like, tea time, and like, oh, it's time for some drinks, or times, like for food. It's just kind of like whatever, but like, I don't know. Yeah. They're extending themselves, I think, too far, right? Like, simplify it, and then all of a sudden this becomes like a really like actual like fun game, in my opinion. But let's talk about the sound. The sound was fine. Very whimsical anime kind of music, which is nothing wrong with that, and it made sense for the vibe, that's for sure. Everything sounded, pretty good to me. It didn't take me out of the game, and but it wasn't doing anything new, but that's okay, right? Like, sometimes that's all you need for a game. But it's not like I'm looking up the Spotify for the soundtrack after, so it's pretty much where I was. I didn't have a lot of notes on the sound, to be honest. How about you?
Yeah, for me, it's just like calming. I wrote like Animal Crossing-esque, in a way of just like, it's just kind of, what you expect in a way, of like when you're walking around this sort of town. And even like some of the sound effects when you're, defeating things and all that. Like, I maybe would have liked a little bit more of like, sometimes you're hitting things with like a giant frying pan. Like, it would have been nice to have like maybe like a little echo of like, you just like wallop this guy with like a giant frying pan or whatever it might be. So, I think, that maybe could have been improved a bit, but overall, like the ambient sound, like the soundtrack and all that. Yeah. It was fine. It didn't bother me, which is good. I think that's the important part with like sound when we cover sound in these games, is like, if it takes away from the rest of the game, that's like a real big red flag. But anything else other than that is fine. Like, there's no issues whatsoever. So yeah, I didn't have a lot of notes either on the sound.
Yeah, and as far as performance goes, obviously we both played on PC. I had some drop frames, right? Especially when things started moving in the dungeons or levels or whatever. Like, a lot of things started moving. I had drop frames. But mostly it was fine, I think. It wasn't too egregious, but like, if it's dropping frames on PC and it's not a very demanding game, I would hope they would work on the performance for once they move it over to Switch or other platforms. How about you?
Yeah, I didn't run across any issues like performance wise. I also use controller, which the game technically, it says it has partial controller support, but I found it to be full controller support on my end. I didn't have any drop frames or anything. And I just put this in the performance section just because I wasn't 100% sure. Maybe this is more gameplay related, but I almost felt like there were maybe too many loading screens. It kind of would have been nice to like, walk out of the restaurant and just be able to like go into the town, like, or similar like Animal Crossing, right? Where like it kind of like all comes down to a point, like it kind of just like goes down. It's like that's all, folks, with like Porky Pig, where it's like going down to like a little circle, and then when you come back into the world, it's like it opens up again, yeah, or whatever, like I just kind of was like, there were a few points where I was just like, really, like there's a loading screen for this part. So it was just that, and I guess it's more on the performance side than anything, and maybe the devs could look into that, or they did talk about, because there's an FAQ on their website that they're not planning to have multiplayer, but they did say that they if there's enough success with this game, they would do it for the second game. So who knows, maybe a lot of these suggestions we have will somehow make their way to the second game. But that would definitely be one thing I would like to see, is like just an improvement with like the loading, or just like a variety of different loading screens. Maybe I think it was like the same thing pretty much every time. It would be cool to have like little tips here and there, or whatever it is, like how a lot of games do it. So yeah, but overall I didn't have like any major issues with the performance. But I think it's time to drop the ratings, Tommy.
All right.
Do you want to take this one, or you want me to take this one?
Yeah, I'll take it. So our rating system is based on from best to worst is certified fresh juice, a steal, get on sale, manager special, and spoiled milk. So, we've had a lot of get on sales, we've had a lot of steals, we've had just a sprinkling of certified fresh juices, and today is our first manager special, and coming from me, that's my rating for this game. And the reason this is, personally, it's closer to spoiled milk for myself. I really did not have a good time with this game, but I have to give it a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, because I know that there is an audience for it, and I think that there are some people who are going to want it, and I would say that that's okay, right? Not every game is going to be for me, but personally, it's very close to spoiled milk, but I'm giving it manager special because I think there are some redeemable qualities, and there's definitely some room for improvement in updates or whatever that could maybe shore up some of these issues. But for me, it is a very, very low manager special, and especially at $25, I would never pay $25 for this game. I would be looking to get this on a deep sale, folks. So there's my rating.
Yeah. So I'm also going to be going with manager special for this one. I think I wasn't teetering on like spoiled milk or anything like that. I was actually teetering between on sale and manager special. And what really decided the manager special is just the price point of the game. With it being $25, especially compared to like other games we've played on the show, other similar games that we've played to this one, I would expect to pay $5 for this game, and I would be fine with it. Maybe up to $10 max, like if I was really into anime or something, or like really just into the concept of the game. But in my opinion, the reason I'm putting this on manager special is because just go buy Moonlighter, just
$5
get Moonlighter.
Cheaper.
There you go. And I think it's on Game Pass as well.
Yeah.
Like it's just an overall better game, unless you're into that anime side of things, or unless, you don't want anything that's overly difficult. Like, if you just want something really easy, it seems like this is a good game. But I'm also giving this a manager special.
Well, there you have it, folks. Our first manager special. We do have one listener question, unless you have some as well. Coming from Capolo, who's a loyal listener right now, as he is on my other podcast, Fresh and Buds. Capolo asks, question for Fresh Juice. How do you guys pick which games to review in the main squeeze? And he also has an addendum. Thanks, Matty, for the cookie recommendations. They are delicious. We also bought those cookies, and they are good. I tried them last night. The
awesome.
The white fudge gingerbread people.
Yeah.
They were quite good. So to answer the question, typically we like to look at, I forget what the website's called. It's just like a
releases.com.
Releases.com, and it gives you a list of releases coming out.
Yeah.
And you could tell how many people saved the game, like or like wants to be notified when it comes out or whatever, or that it's interested. So that kind of gives us a good gauge of like what people are interested in. You know, we're not always going to pick the games that everybody's interested in, but like we also are interested in kind of seeing what people are like excited about. So we try to review games along those lines. Also, you know, if a developer gives us a free key, we're definitely likely to review it because, you know, it's a little bit easier on our wallet or whatever. But, you know, we've gotten some other free keys that we haven't reviewed, right? Mm-hmm. So like we try to like figure out what seems like will be the most interesting to talk about. And also, like, you know, for our, like, we want to play game, like none of these games we go in saying we don't want to enjoy this game. We want to enjoy every game that we play. It's just not the case, right? We saw it with this game. So we tend to pick games that look like we're going to have fun with. Also, a fun side note, to go back, I remember you this is like a weird, like, I just remembered you had mentioned Leica, because it reminded me that we really enjoyed that. And you said that Leica almost has the anime style and still worked within the confines of the game. Also worth noting that like Leica was also a female dog protagonist that didn't have breasts. So I think that was also a huge difference. So, you know, I don't know if anybody really knows what dogs are like in real life, but they don't typically have human breasts. Just in case anybody was wondering. Typically, not that, you know, hey, listen, science, AI is getting crazy. But do you have anything to add to that answer?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, when it comes, just like talking about like when it comes to like when we get keys for games, you know, yeah, we are more likely to play those games just because, you know, being a realist, like we can't buy, especially some of these games that we think are overpriced. You know, spending that every week, you know, is going to hit our wallets. So we try to, you know, we always have good intentions when we're looking at games and we're trying to schedule out the show. You know, we try to reach out to those developers of games that we think have potential. And if they get back to us with a key, obviously that can help us make the episode. And even if they don't get back to us with a key, we still kind of want to review that game. So, you know, it's never going to influence like really which games we want to play. It just kind of helps with like, ordering the games that we are going to play, because we can be like, oh, well, we already have a key for this. We might as well do this next week, or, you know, whatever it is. But yeah, if you guys ever have suggestions for games as well, you know, I know in my Discord, I've had a few people like send us a few different games to take a look at that I've looked at. I know we try to focus on like the newer games and the ones that come out like, you know, over the last like 2 or 3 weeks from when we put out the episode. But even if there's like an older one that, you know, is really great that we've never kind of explored before, like we're always open to trying that out. And then I know, you know, we're even talking about potentially, you know, doing episodes where we're featuring certain demos of games, you know, so the games that aren't out yet. That we just want to, you know, try the demos for and let you guys know what we think. So, yeah, but yeah, we're just taking a look at like releases.com, taking a look at all the indies that are coming out, clicking on them, figuring out which ones we kind of think look interesting, and then just going from there. So actually, you know, that's a great question because I don't think we have a game set up for next week.
Yeah,
so that's something we'll have to talk about after the show. And it just, you know, it also just so happened to work out that this was a food related game on Thanksgiving week, which I don't even think we thought about at all.
No, we didn't.
So it just kind of worked out like that. So sometimes, you know, a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then, but, yeah, great question. And, you know, I'm glad you're enjoying those cookies too, Cap. You know, they're awesome. They're great. I don't think I have any more in my house right now, but if there's any other great cookies I come across, I'll definitely let the listeners know.
Amen. Now that's going to bring us to the rec room. where we recommend something that might not be an indie game. And we hope that you all check it out. Like those cookies that Matt also recommended. What do you have to recommend this week?
Yeah, so I haven't been doing a ton of different new things. So the thing that I kind of started recently that's new is Maria and I started watching The Morning Show on Apple TV with like Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, and Steve Carell, and there's a few other people in it. And I think we're like 2 episodes in right now, and so far it's pretty good. Apple TV seems to put out like good quality shows that are interesting. The premise of the show is that Jennifer Aniston and Steve Carell are kind of the mom and dad of TV on their network for the morning show, and Steve Carell gets fired because of like sexual misconduct, which we don't know if it's true or not at this point. And so it's kind of like going over how do they fill that spot, what are the ratings, like it's all kind of news oriented. It kind of reminds me of like The Newsroom, if you've seen that. That's like an older show, I guess, or at this point, not sure when that came out, but with like Jeff Daniels and all that stuff. So great show as well, or at least some good episodes of that one. So yeah, The Morning Show on Apple TV, I would recommend so far, 2 episodes in. But Tommy, what do you got for the people?
Yeah, I heard good things about The Morning Show and like Apple TV in general. I think this is the second thing you've recommended from Apple TV.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on like Ted Lasso, Severance, The Morning Show. Shrinking is a fantastic show with Jason Segel and Harrison Ford.
Oh man.
So anyway, sorry, I could go on and on. I'm surprised how good they are at TV. But anyway,
they seem to be the forefront at this point. A lot of places dropping the ball, but my recommendation is the band Yawn Mower. I mentioned at the beginning, but like it was just cool because like they have this kind of loser rock, like kind of Cake, Weezer, maybe some other kind of like almost shoegazy stuff kind of going on. But the drummer is just like so good, like actually is just doing really unique and smart things with the drums in these like kind of like not basic rock songs, but like these like rock songs that could be just formulaic, but they end up not being because of how well he plays and all their ideas that are going into it. Now, I saw them on Saturday at like a local bar, right? We saw them at See Here Now, a big music festival. That was their big first gig they've ever done. They became a band in like 2020, right? And it was weird. There was 4 bands on the ticket. It was like a free show. You could just go in, right? And cool. The first band was this band called Neon Rayon or something like that. They were wacky. They were weird. They were a lot of fun. And then this band called Echo Plum. Really like young kids. Like they had X's on their hands. That's how. And my fiance made the point that they can't even drink because they got X's on their hands. And they were good. They had this like vibe like the Strokes, and probably nice. And I think everybody was there for them, which was crazy. And they went second.
Great name too.
Echo Plum, yeah, very very cool. And then this band called Youth Palette, which is they're from like not Canada, Ohio. Same thing. Yeah. They were pretty cool too. Lead singer looked like Weird Al. It was like, this is the most Ohio thing I've ever seen. Not that he's from Ohio. Weird Al. I don't know where he's from, but then but by the time Yawn Mower started playing, and they're like really good. There was like 20 people left in the bar, and like we were just like sitting there, like literally like I could reach out and touch, like we were just at a table. I could reach out and touch the lead singer, and like we rocked out. They played a great set, and the lead singer was really cool. He like came up to us, like fist bumped us, like thanks for hanging out and being engaged and like watching. We're like, yeah, man, we saw you at See Here Now. He's like, oh yeah, that was crazy for us. Like we like saw Sheryl Crow backstage, and that was crazy for us. It was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. So they're like really really cool dudes, and just like love to support some New Jersey bands and yeah, check them out. So
Yeah, actually, you had sent some snaps, I think, or I guess it was Instagram, whatever
Yeah.
it was, and I was like, my first thought was like, what basement is he in? And
Oh,
seeing like these like this band, because I've been to like basement shows before, and like it looked like that kind of vibe, and I
yeah.
didn't realize it was Yawn Mower because like you had showed me them, a few weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I have like one of their songs, Elevation, on my
Mm-hmm.
list. That it's just kind of a reminder for me to like go look at their other songs because I'll always see it in my like recently liked or whatever. But yeah, they're great, and I definitely like their vibe. So it's so cool though that you basically got like a private show in a
Yeah,
way,
it was kind of neat.
them,
It was kind of
and
neat.
who knows, maybe they're like gonna blow up like 21 Pilots or something, and
Who
then
knows? Maybe.
all of a sudden you're getting VIP tickets,
They're like,
across the
you were
nation.
there for us. But no, it wasn't it's a bar. It's called John and Peter's. It's like a legendary bar in New Hope, Pennsylvania that like, I think even like the Rolling Stones played at one point. But it's like, if you ever heard
Wow.
of the band Ween,
Yeah.
they're from New Hope. And like that's just like was their home club basically.
Oh, cool.
Like when I worked at the liquor store across the bridge, the members of Ween would come in all the time. So like, it's just kind of cool, like cool bar. But
Yeah,
I think that's gonna do it, Matt.
I think so.
We don't know what we're gonna review next week, but you're gonna find out when you tune in. And you can continue to find me on Twitter at FreshBudsPod. I also have another podcast called Fresh and Buds. I'll talk about a game called Flesh and Blood, trading card game, really cool, really fun, physical card game, awesome. Check it out if you're interested. And then you can find us on all of our socials for this show, Fresh Juice at Fresh Juice Pod on everything, basically Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and no, not Blue Sky, Friendster. No, and that's gonna do it. I mean, hey, where can people find you, Matt?
Yeah, if you want to catch up with me outside the show, at Matty Gorm, GORM, on pretty much all the socials. For those of you following the Fresh Juice Pod socials, we appreciate it. I know it's been a little dormant since I've been a little under the weather, but that's going to start ramping up again, and we're gonna be posting some more. So stay on the lookout for that. But yeah, another killer ep in the books.
You know what they say, buddy. You gotta stay fresh. You gotta stay juicy. Goodbye, juice heads.